Hello, hello everyone! How are you guys all doing today? We are... actually, let me try and put on some background music real quick, because we're not going to be doing a whole lot of playing games tonight, but we are going to do quite a bit of talking about games tonight. So... give me just a second. I should have thought about this earlier, but I'm going to try and put on something resembling background music. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. What do I feel like? This one's good. Quiet like though. There we go. Looks like just a hair louder so that it actually picks up. Voila! So, how's everyone doing today? We are back with another Steam NextFest, which is crazy. Can't believe it's already been 6 months since the last one. Hello, China Art. Welcome. Glad you can make it. So, I'll be honest, I tried out a handful of demos. We might hop into some later. But for the most part, there's going to be just me talking on stream. So, I hope you all enjoy that. Because, unfortunately, this round, there's a lot of games that are really bad to stream. Either because, one, they decided that having the mouse sensitivity be 5 quadrillion is a good idea, so I don't want you guys to get motion sick. Or, two, it makes me motion sick to just play the games. Because they're pre-alpha builds, they're not finalized in any way, shape, or form. So, they often really are kind of painful to play, regrettably. I hate to say that. It feels bad. I understand making games is super hard. But at the same time, I don't want to be inflicting things that are terrible to watch on you guys, so we're just going to be talking about them instead. And if there are some that look particularly interesting, then you just let me know, and we can definitely try and boot it up. But I do not make super duper promises. The other thing, though, that's worth noting is that we are not going to be talking probably about some of the big names. Oh, shut up. I see, you are right. I did, in fact, spend all that time. But by big names, I mean like Inscription, Tunic, Burb Cafe. There is a Burb Cafe. Where is it? Burb Cafe. But if any of these look interesting, we can definitely take a look through them. You guys can wishlist them, download them for yourself. Because this runs through to the 7th? I think this runs through to the 7th of October. So, there's a little bit of time for you guys to see what looks interesting to you, and then dig in. So, there are freaking 728 demos available as part of the Steam NextFest. So we're going to try and focus primarily on the historical ones, or see what they think is historical, and talk about the ones I've played, ones that I'm excited for, you know, all that jazz. Now, there are actually kind of 3 that are super relevant within our themes and moods. Medieval. Historical. Well, you can make the argument that 1980s and 1990s are both relevant. But mythology and alt-hist are also super duper relevant. And World War II. Maybe Gothic. You know, so, pirates. I said 2, I then listed 8. World War I. What else is new? Because unfortunately, you know, if we start with the most obvious choice on mood for the channel, historical. 37 historical games, supposedly. Oh, and they finally fixed this. Oh, I was complaining about this. When I checked this a couple days ago, this game right here, Medic Pacific War, was not listed as historical. Somehow. Despite being on the Pacific Front of World War II, it did not have a historical tag. Because Steam sorts the moods by user-defined tags. I realized that after the tweet, that there's limited control developers actually get. But yeah, the users kind of botched this one for a hot second. Ooh, good luck with that, Escudo. Anyway, I'll admit, right, in the era of we now have 15 more World War II shooters, which we will eventually probably spend a couple weeks just going through, you know, with a relatively recent Call of Duty, that's World War II, and a relatively recent Battlefield, that's World War II, and Enlisted, and was it Hell Rains Down? Having this one where you're playing like a third-person shooter with a campaign, except you don't even have a gun. What, right? I mean, it is a little bit hacksaw ridge, but right, you're a medic, so we're making the decisions on how to get people out rather than how to get people, or rather than inflicting more casualties. So this is actually good. And yeah, the thing that stood out to me is that, right, we might see it, not off that live stream, but one of these, I think, it's in this one. If we'll pull that up a bit more. There's a point I saw where they're doing actual combat first aid right here. Tourniquet, wrapping it, and there you'll see there's a point where they're trying to push the gauze into the wound. That's actually, like, historically proper. So, exactly, right? This is specifically a critique of response to World War shooters. And so, animation doesn't look awesome, but we are seeing some actual thought into how does this actually work, and who's helping all of our superhuman soldiers do the thing. There it is, right there. Actually having to shove the gauze into the wound, as grim as that is. So, it's actually pretty cool. I'll admit, among the entire field of World War II shooters, this is what I am looking forward to the most. So, we shall in fact see, hopefully that it'll come out, be good. Later on, if you guys want to come back to this, take a look at the demo for ourselves. I've got it downloaded, so we can definitely do that. But yeah, US military on the Pacific Front. Our job will to take care of wounded companions in the best possible way, according to knowledge, skills, and medical equipment on hand. Every life matters, but you can't save all of them. Decide carefully, but act quickly. And there's no time for doubt here, so. There's a lot of blood and injuries, as usually at war. Fair enough. What's up next? Let's say it was in New York City in the 1930. Oh, this could be cool. Let's take a look at this one. News Tower is a news and resource management game. Your goal is to build a newspaper empire in 1930s New York that is profitable, independent, and most importantly, wins the trust of its leaders. Send reporters all over the globe. So it's a Dutch team. Cool. I wonder. New York, 1930. The USA is in depression. The biggest economic downturn in the history of the industrialized world and another world war are imminent. Newspapers are struggling throughout the country, as many of their customers are having to pinch pennies like never before. In this turbulent time, you are trying to become one of the nation's most trusted newspapers. Amazing. So, this one I think actually could. Let's see what their footage says. Smugglers, meaning the mob. Mostly the mob. Do you say anything interesting here? Let's take a look. So this one hadn't actually shown up on any of my searches before, so this is actually new. Hey! Already something I'm really liking to see. Right, huge. Immediate, focus on having a diverse news team. And, you know, quote-unquote, early access, or quote-unquote historical accuracy be damned. Regardless of the realities, which I don't know one way or the other. I've not done a ton of work in, like, 1930s. That's literally 700 years too late for me. But I appreciate that they are immediately going for that, and I'll be curious to see if they're referencing actual things in the 1930s, or if they're going for more of an aesthetic. So let me just set... oh, hang on. Let me pull up this one, and then download the demo in the background, and we can cycle back to that if we need it. Voila. Next. What do we have here? World War I? Oh, here's the other one that was doing it. Look at this. It's plainly under the historical set, but look at the tags. Wargame, World War I, turn-based, hex grid. World War I apparently is not historical. I got nothing. What do we have here, then? Next up. Oh. Well. We're going to be committing a Tomb Raider Metroidvania, but with Minoan culture. Hooray. Hooray. Historical action thriller as the uncle... what? What? Join parkour master Marie Taylor and treasure hunter James Andrew in a historical action thriller as they unveil the secrets of a forgotten kingdom which has been tragically trapped in an endless time loop. Explore a beautifully hand-drawn, non-linear open world, recover valuable relics, chart a lost island, and gather new clues in every loop to complete an ancient prophecy. Solve the riddles and mysteries that anger the old gods on your quest to prevent history from repeating itself forever. In 1639 BC, a powerful explosion devastated the Minoan civilization and sank the birthplace of their empire, the volcanic island of Thera. This is a historical eruption, though they're a bit ambitious on how precise they can get the dating. History seems to repeat itself as the island has resurfaced. The island never sank, for the record. You can still go there. It exists. It's an atoll, but... meh. Meh. Whatever. The island has resurfaced and a new cataclysm is bound to happen. Why were the Minoans so advanced to their time? Did King Minos foresee their demise? Can a new eruption of Thera be stopped? They weren't. They weren't. The answer here is why were they so advanced is that they weren't. The game, I mean, really well done comic book style cutscenes. Right on the production level, this game actually looks like it's super well done, though. A little bit overstating. Most everything. Yeah, and also I agree. It is Santorini, yes. AC, you mentioned that you're not seeing a lot of Minoan art. I'm seeing a lot of classical Greek, and not a lot of Minoan. There's a few things, right? Right here, this little bull iconography is at least clearly Minoan inspired, if not strictly Minoan. But yeah, it's the island of Santorini. So, not that hard to go to. I think the statue there is also Minoan based. A lot of the rest of this... Oh, one of the masks there, I had a... I think I've lost it, but I can't there. Right on the next loop, that little gold mask is a... said to be the death mask of Agamemnon. It's not actually, but you know, that's the... I think that's technically a Mycenaean one instead of a Minoan, but it's clearly in the same tradition. You can buy them in like half the tourist shops on the Peloponnesian Peninsula. It's fabulous. I am getting strong vibes of the old Indiana Jones comics. Yes. It looks cool though. Right? I mean, if vaguely, emphasis on vaguely, but wait, was that actually linear A? Hang on a minute. They may have actually had a reference of linear A. Let's wait for the cycle again, if it has a cycle again. We'll may need a backup. There. Hang on. Yeah, I don't know that it's actually linear A, but it definitely is linear A adjacent. Which is pretty neat. You love to see that. Linear A is actually, well, it's a still currently non-deciphered script that seems to be the dominant writing script for the Minoans on Crete. Which, by the way, they said Thera is the center of Minoan civilization. It's not. Crete is. Obviously. Anyway. But yeah, it has been a bit since we've gotten doing archaeology badly simulators. So, if you want one of those, you know, Tomb Raider, Uncharted style stuff, here's a Metroidvania of doing archaeology badly. The ethics committees. The ethics committees will be so mad. What do we have here? Well, does it actually... Fair play. Fair play. English language is not supported. Let it be known. I cannot read enough Chinese in order to sort this out. RIP. Blues? Look, when either they get around to publishing more than just Uncharted 4 on PC, or I get around to getting a PlayStation and can get the Uncharted collection, we're totally doing the Uncharted games. It's probably Three Kingdoms. It's always Three Kingdoms. But I don't know for sure. What's up next? Oh, fancy. If you want to support Project Gutenberg and do some basic cryptography, this one looks interesting. Otherwise, I think there's not a whole lot to say that it's historical other than it's quoting things. But now we finally get to one that I've actually played. I did play the demo for this last night. If you like, Dwarf Fortress, RimWorld, some of those people managing ones, this is a game to keep an eye out for. Thing is, well, mostly historically accurate. Yeah, we'll take that fairly loosely. As you might guess from the script and the Tartan, this is supposedly in Scotland. The thing is, you start off the game with the classic problem of survival games of everyone's naked and you have nothing. After being granted a fief in Highland Scotland by the king. Because the king totally just grants fiefs to people. Right. Learn just how hard it was to make a linen shirt. Grow the flax, thresh out the seed, throw the stalks in a river, let them rot from on, strip the loosened fibers from the stalks, spin the fibers into thread, read the threads into the and then sew your linen shirt. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Ooh, pretty fire. Huh. Thank you for going and translating that, AC. Turns out the Chinese game is about Qi Guang rather than the Three Kingdoms period, which is a change, but a pleasant one. I mean, it doesn't say that there's a tartan designer. I'm not seeing anyone wearing tartans. Admittedly, they also are just like little people that go bounce, 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 bounce. So, yeah. If they are sticking to their historical accuracy claim, they better not, because tardans are in use in early modern Scotland, not medieval Scotland. But I also would not be so horribly mad if they went for it anyway. Anyway, this one's actually super addictive, right? This one's super fun to play. But the demo goes through the first 10 days. But so if you like RimWorld, etc., keep an eye out for this one. I'm sure you can do some pretty cool stuff with it. You use wall torches and fires to heat, light, and occasionally burn down straw houses. Yeah, that's fair. That sums it up pretty well. Plus Scotland rep. We don't get that a whole lot. Let's see, who's up next? Another Viking game. This one's a pretty basic tactics game. But fun enough if that's your vibe. Oh, that's not good. Oh, that's not good. A third-person shooter that claims to be the Knights of Al-Aqsa in Tunisia. That's... no way that goes well. I mean, there is... It's a choose-your-own-adventure game. Yes, Raptors, you do see one. It's a choose-your-own-adventure game. Yeah, there's a lot of problematic imagery going on right there. We're not gonna give them the clicks. But what's important there is that it's tying into a lot of Crusader iconography while having you do what is implied to be a terrorism. So, What is this one? A medieval base builder. Fantasy story-driven campaign. Oh look, there are giants. This is the thing that, you know, as a professional, I talk a lot about some big ol' talk on how, oh, fantasy games are also in some way still historical, and that matters, and we should respect that, and that medievalist fantasies are still valid adaptations of the Middle Ages. And then at the same token, I get around to these, and we'll see more on the medieval tag. I click on the medieval tag and get exclusively fantasy games. And it makes me sad. Because, yeah, I mean, right, there is a limit to the amount of variation in medievalist fantasy for the most part. There's, barring games that put in a lot of effort, right, big budget titles, like Skyrim, that give you plenty of space to talk about, the remediation is so surface level, there isn't necessarily a whole lot to talk about, even if the game itself ends up being really fun. And this is in no way, shape, or form a judgment on whether the game is fun or not. Right? It is just that I don't have anything interesting to say about it. However, I do have interesting things to say about this one. Misericordia, Volume 1, is the first part of a series of mystery visual novels set in a convent in 1482. So, this initial thing here is kind of a problem, but, the age of exploration and enlightenment is on the distant horizon. Well, no, it's the 15th century, it's well underway. And the Renaissance is in full swing across Europe, but in England, the War of the Roses is in its final throes. Change is coming, but in one little convent in the north of the kingdom, everyone has seemed blissfully unaware. Everyone except Sister Catherine, a beloved nun and firebrand thinker. Replace this with Heretic, and you'd be more accurate, who has just been murdered. In an isolated monastery with an already mysterious reputation, any one of the sisters could be the killer, and Mother Superior is as stumped as anyone else. As an anchoress, though, you took an oath to never leave your cell, to devote yourself entirely to God and provide spiritual support to all who came to your door. But as the only sister who couldn't possibly have committed the crime, you have a new mission. Solve the case before the bishop shatters the convent and the killer goes unpunished. So, sadly, they don't lean into this like they should, right? They say, you've suddenly joined the regular congregation, but imagine a murder mystery where you are an anchoress and cannot leave to go do your own investigation. Think of the potential that has. It would be so good. And you could really lean into a lot of the language of miracles and quasi-miraculous dreams, depending on how strong into Marian cults your particular convent is, which you could go very hard. You could have the Virgin Mary be appearing in your dreams each night to offer guidance, question mark? But there's also accounts of, nuns being possessed by demons or being subjected to demonic torments. And so some of your dreams are misleading or other things. But yeah, otherwise you're relying on questions, Ace Attorney Apollo Justice style visual tics. Being given evidence, and then piecing together what evidence you're missing in the story. There's just so many, and letting a miraculous milieu really establish that and guide you. It'd be so cool. So, I have a feeling that they're slightly underutilizing this. Right, slightly underutilizing the setting that they're going for. But there is... I mean, the game looks cool. They're actually doing something really cool. Right, the character art is all hand-drawn, but then they're actually using a heavily rotoscoped photo. Oh, that's a beheading. Oh, that'll be interesting. Right, all of those are actual photos that they're really heavily altering. So, aesthetically, looks pretty cool. Looks very stylized, but pretty cool. So, I'm excited for this one. I'm actually really excited for this one. But I hope they lean into more of this. And lean a little bit more into the ongoing spiritual debates of the 15th century. And medieval saints' lives, ideas of convents, etc. It'd be so good. It'd be so good. Anyway. There's another one. Palace on the Hill. We'll see if we recognize it. I don't see that one in this set, but we'll see if it shows up. It's not listed as historical. Also, yeah, this is a cat girl. Why is this listed as historical? I'm just gonna throw that one out there. Just gonna throw that one out there. Did I? Am I just blind? Oh, pal, right here. I am in fact just blind. Oh, yep. Look at that. Piece of the lost history of your village using art. Features a beautifully painted top-down world with a 15th century Indian fort to explore, farms and mechanics, and an artwork creation system. That's hype. Ooh. Oh, that's really... Look at that. Palace on the Hill is an open-world adventure exploration game which follows the story of a young boy, Veer, as he discovers his passion for painting stories. Made with beautiful, painted 2D graphics, the game is set in a small village nestled among hills, overlooked by the ruins of a palace of a kingdom long forgotten. The stories are collectibles which you use to make artwork inspired by Indian miniature paintings. Oh, look at that! Hold up just a minute. Download PC demo. Fabulous. Hold up just a minute. That's another one that we can absolutely stick on the demo list and we can take a look. That looks rad. But nice catch, AC. I completely missed that. Here's another one that I hope gets a lot more polish. Cause, Southeast Asian rep. Perong Laos Maritime Warfare is a historical real-time strategy set in the early modern 15th to 18th century on the Indonesian archipelago. While the kingdoms rise as spices and trading boom, this is your chance to establish your maritime power and beat your competitor, especially European powers. Now, it's specifically Southeast Asia Paradox game. Right, is most closely related to the Paradox game. Aims. Unfortunately, I did try this one because I wanted to show it off, but this is a case of the game is very difficult to make sense of, because it is made in Game Maker using fairly low resolution pixel graphics. So hopefully they can clean that up, really sharpen things up a bit. But it was very hard to navigate, control, and make sense of. So I'm really hoping that they do this, because having one in the tutorial they actually start you off as the Majapahits. So being able to really, hopefully, explore all the different little cultures, petty king or micro kingdoms, and resistances to colonialism over this time. It'd be really good. It'd be really good. I'm really hopeful, because I wanted to do well. But it hurt my eyeballs to play it. It very much hurt my eyeballs to play it. So, fingers crossed that they clean that up a bit. And then this one is another Viking hack and slash thing, except for some reason you're a werewolf. I got nothing. I got nothing. So I think that's it for the historical tag. Medieval. Looks like it's an alt history Nikola Tesla game. So, the medieval games. Fantasy. 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 Looks interesting, but also fantasy. I mean, it's most obviously related to, what would it be, like, Mont Saint-Michel? Yeah. Right, these sort of island colonies. I mean, looks amazing. I really like this look. I think the pixel art is done super well. Odd mix of time frames, though, right? Windmills on then a Greek palace, nicely painted. Appreciate the paint, but seems very much, yeah, Adonis. If you wanted to make the Greek aesthetic specific, a temple to Adonis. Don't know why this tagged is medieval. TBH. TBH. Looks cool. As city building things are your jam, definitely wishlist this. And by the way, throughout this, if you see things that you like, please go wishlist them right now. As I talk about them. Because it does make a difference for a lot of these devs, and this is their best chance at exposure. So, we'll at least acknowledge that. Anyway, continuing with the medieval tag. Fantasy. 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 Clan Folk, which we talked about, so, you know, we got one. Fantasy. This one actually supposedly, I think, is supposed to be in... Yeah. It's a Slovakian folktale. Juro Janashik. Okay, this one could actually be pretty hype. Not really medieval, because he's 18th century, I think. I think he's 18th century. But, I mean, folk heroes are a great choice for video game, like pseudo-biographical video games. So, I'm always here for it. The hats really do say 18th. But, right, last Team NextFest demo, we had things like The Legend of Tianding, which I don't know if that's out yet. I don't think it is. I didn't check recently. I'll need to do that, because that's another case of, in that case, a Taiwanese folk hero. This one using a Slovak folk hero. So, neat. Anyway, onwards. Fantasy, 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 fantasy. Dante's Inferno. Technically, studio fantasy, 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 fantasy. Even though it says 1838, it's actually fantasy. Another city builder. Yeah, let's look at the Inferno. Journey through the 9 circles of hell in this atmospheric puzzle game, which closely follows the epic poem Inferno by Dante Alighieri. Each circle has a unique mood and mechanics, and interspersed between the over 100 puzzles are plenty of artwork, which they say it's mostly who it's from. Gustavo Dorés wood engravings that have been newly colorized for the game. And then uses Henry Wadsworth Longfellow's translation of Inferno. So, you know, you're gonna do a puzzle or 3, and then you're gonna get to read a bit of the Inferno. So, Longfellow's translation is not accurate, but good fun. I do enjoy it. And Dorés' woodblocks are phenomenal. Right, they are the definitive image of Inferno. Oh, they'll almost certainly... Oh... I see. I hope they do. I mean, it would be real funny if they made the Pope... if they specifically call out the Pope. It'd be very funny. I'd be very here for it. But, I have no idea what to expect, but hey. Lit nerds get hype. Lit nerds get hype, because here's a little puzzle game version of Inferno. Oh, they re-rolled some of the things. Okay. Fantasy. Fantasy. Fantasy, fantasy. 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 I think. Ghost Dog. Well, that's a plus. They know how to market themselves. Not sure what's medieval about this. Okay, yeah, we can say with some degree of likelihood fantasy. Looks, I mean, I like the style. I like the style. I may need to check that out for my own sake. But, aww, puppy. But clearly not a history. Fantasy. Horror fantasy. Like, just exactly like Siege Up, there's actually 2 in a row here of fantasy Siege Sim. I want a game about, yes, Zoe, I want a game about historical dogs, me too. Big me too out. Mythological party game? I wonder if this actually says who it's referencing. This is Insular Unseal, so the vibe is Welsh? It doesn't say. It's fantasy. Shame. If it was based on Welsh lit, that would be cool. I'd be here for that. Fantasy, fantasy, fantasy. Misrecorder, which we already talked about. Fantasy, 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 fantasy. Paranglout, which we already talked about. Fantasy, 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 nonsensical fantasy. Like, Gladiators or Sparta. As in, Gladiators, you know, that Roman sport act. Oh, Sparta, that famously Roman... Wait. Hold up a minute. Totally nonsensical, don't worry about it. And then also, this one doesn't for some reason doesn't have the medieval tag, despite being set in 1199 and being Robin Hood. This is the one that turns the sensitivity on its mouse that has its mouse sensitivity turned up to like 5 quadrillion. But there are a few things to commend it, right? It's very much leaning into the late folkloric Robin Hood, right? It is not the 12th century Robin Hood. It's the 15th, 16th, 17th, 19th, 20th century Robin Hood. Also, Robin's American. Everyone else is English, but the voice actor for Robin is American. But it is weirdly, though, set slightly later than most of the other ones, right? Like, the Robin Hood Errol Flynn movie is in, like, 1193. This is in summer of 1199, just after Richard the Lionheart dies. So, meh. Maybe, hopefully this one has references to, you know, Shinto underworlds, since it mentions Yami specifically, but... I hope you guys saw for that, though, you know, of the ones that are actually identifiable historical one. Two. Well, 3. 4. 4? 5. 5 games. 5 whole games that are not medievalist fantasy in this. Well, technically 6, but that I'm not giving this one points for not being medievalist. It's not a great look. I'm not gonna lie, it's not a great look coming out of the medieval section. Again, right, I'm not sure. I'm genuinely unsure whether these tags are exclusively user-defined, or if though actually this one let's revisit this one. This one is fantasy, but it's a setting inspired by medieval India, and I was just looking at that again, and I saw it. Realized that was not Euro medievalist. So, shoutouts to it for, referencing for having non-Euro medievalism. And hopefully they can do a little bit to really focus on just how darn cool this time period is. Like, if we're looking at Mughal period, there's actually some really neat things about, both the size, scale, etc. of medieval Indian warfare, that even this game, pushing on, since it is pushing on towards India, maybe can do something interesting there. It could be Bollywood. It could go in a bit Bollywood style. It could also showcase some of the actual cool stuff. If it does, I know a guy who specializes in medieval and early modern India, so may try and get him on. To gush about it all, and I can just let him gush about it because it might be really cool. Now, it could do Delhi Sultanate, could do Mughals. It's not clear to me just off the aesthetics exactly what we're pulling in, but I also hope that they could show us kind of a little bit of the stuff around the early Puranic traditions, right? There's so much room for some interesting stuff around the early Puranic material and its intersection with warfare and culture in, say, 14th or 15th century India. I'd be hyped for it. So, I'll revise it. We'll make it a 6th game that's worth paying attention to here. Reminder, if any of these look cool, please do go wishlist them, support the devs. Next up. Medieval mythology. Or just mythology. There's not once again, there's not a whole lot here that's making me feel super hype, but there are a few things. This is a, weird Dracula, it's like Castlevania, but worse. But this one, you are Ailu, a young Sami whose ordinary reindeer herding day turns into an adventure of celestial proportions. Harness the power of an old shamanic drum and spirit animals to fight against the disorder spreading across the land. So, the dev team for this is Finnish, and at least the CEO and historical consultant appear to be Sami themselves. So this is in the trend that has shown up in the last couple of years of indigenous people turning indigenous stories into video games. It's great. Oh my god, it's a salmalope. It's a jackalope but a salmon. Look at how cute it is. I love it already. So, Skuolfi, the owl, Goavja, Chamsa, and Reaban. But yeah, traditional Sami yoic singing from award-winning Hilda Lensman, which is awesome. Note on outsiders view of Sami cultures, catch hares, and talk to spirits to learn more about the game world and Sami stories. Yeah, it does, Asu. But I know it is also... these are all actual Sami spiritual animals. And right, ordinarily... Oh, the arms of Inari. Fabulous. Yes. Let's quick pull them. There they are. Salmon with reindeer antlers. Amazing. Amazing. Look, this is great. There's quite a few games recently that are doing this. And it's awesome. It's awesome. I'm glad indigenous peoples are turning to games, and that the accessibility of game development tools is to the point where indigenous people can, without needing to bring on very much or any help, be able to make games about themselves and their stories. It is great. I love it. And I'm very happy for this game existing. It's already on my wish list. When it comes out, we are playing it. Get hype. Next up, lo and behold, No Man Island. An empty open world survival sim with Aztec. Actually, is it Maya? I can't see. It's a calendar. There's a calendar. So, also, yes, Home Improvement Hercules. Look, it's a better take on Hercules than lots of places do. Let's go for it. Vaguely Nordic? It says Haim. Haim usually says Nordic. Nothing about the rest of this says Nordic, though. Inspired by Norse mythology, yeah. Sure. Ashir's runic abilities or not, or Alban, because Alban is totally not a Latin name that means white. Ashir is not a Norse name. Alban is a Latin name, Albanus. Just gonna throw that out there. So, oops. There's two others that I tried. I tried Ancient Gods. Ancient Gods is a lot of fun, right? If you like Slay the Spire type deck builder roguelikes. It takes them about as seriously as, you know, Age of Mythology takes its mythological references, which is to say, not? Look, it's Heimdallr. Oh look, it's like Slay the Spire. In the game we could play as Charon, Athena, Osiris, Sekhmet, Thoth, Bastet, let's see, Apollo, Artemis. No, we can fight Apollo. We can play as Apollo. But anyway, the gods that appear are all Greek and Egypt. So Apollo, Artemis, Ares, Athena, Isis, Osiris, Sekhmet, Sobek, and Bastet. Oh, and Charon for Greek. But yeah, there's a few others. There's plenty of others planned. Clearly Quetzalcoatl. Clearly Heimdallr. So, right, don't expect this one to take it seriously. I mean, they haven't shown any Norse Gods G Silver or any. Right, in the demo we couldn't play with any Norse Gods. They showcased one here. But as far as will they include Celtic gods, I expect they will, but we need to put a big ol' asterisk next to the word god whenever we're talking about Celtic anything. Because it's a lot, but in short, the Tuatha De Danann are not all old figures. Even the ones that are old are not necessarily all worshipped as gods. And even if they were worshipped as gods, may have very little in common with how they exist in the surviving stories. Oh, good. They've already said that Bragi and Tezcatlipoca are in here. That's good. That's good. Fabulous. Oh yeah, there they are. Bragi, Tezcatlipoca, Bastard, Osiris, Athena, Apollo, Heimdall, Sif. Sif's also in there. And then one of their OCs, Azalea. Neat. Neat. Very interesting choices. Oh, but it's a gacha game. Ha, they've got gacha summoning. Of course they do. Of course they do. Primary sources strike again, but also, there's a lot of invention that goes on in the early Middle Ages to make things fit into biblical chronologies. What is it? Sorry, I'm looking up a different game here. So, this one here, Aztec, Forgotten Gods, is the last one in the mythology category to look at. But, their demo is very short, but this one is actually really, really interesting. So, it's set in a super duper, like, cybertech future of a world that clearly adopts Mesoamerican, well, Aztec aesthetics. Right, she is Nahua. The developers are actually Nahua. And they're consulting with experts on the lore and portrayal of the Aztec gods in this game. But, you know, focusing primarily on big giant boss fights, which is the correct choice. Which is the correct choice. Watcher is also in our Discord server, Zoe. So you can just go !Discord if you are not in there yet. So this is... We've got specialists in Irish literature in there, which is great. And yeah, it is like super mega ball game arena. Right, I like this. I like this cyber... Right, Cyber Aztec looks kinda rad. Looks absolutely freaking sick. And Cyber makes it really easy to do, right, Shadow of the Colossus-esque big set-piece boss fights. And really roll with it. So... The demo is really short, so it will be fairly easy to go play this, but... This and Dream of Darkness is the other upcoming Aztec game that is consulting with historians and folklorists of Mesoamerica to actually try and do it some sense of, you know, proper portrayal. Peter, honestly, you missed a couple of interesting games that we've talked about. There's not a lot of playing, because it will hurt my eyes to play video games right now. So instead we're just talking about the games and trawling through their 700 and some odd demos. Now. Oh, well. Botch that. Let's try that again. World War One. World War Two. World War One. Fair enough. World War Two? Does World War Two have anything for us? World War Two. World War Two has quite a few. Yeah. Full disclaimer, I know and have heard one of them, one of the devs talk about Tree of Darkness. And knowing their decision-making process a little bit better, they are not going to get everything perfectly right. They are fundamentally working within a fairly European framework, given that it's a Lovecraftian game. But I think it's one that they have been working with historians and being really careful about their research process. So it will not be perfect. It will not be up to academic snuff. Not a single dang game in this is going to be up to academic snuff. And if that's... there'll be room to critique it validly and still appreciate it as far and away the best representation so far. Ha! G Silver, what an excellent question. Do you know of any games that are mostly historically authentic? Which is... you just struck straight into the central debate of the academic field of historical game studies with that particular phrasing. So... historically authentic can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. There is the meme answer that AC is doing of listing board games that existed in the historical past, like the Roll Game of R, or the Goose Game. Not that Goose Game, the other Goose Game. Nefertop, etc. But that's probably not what you meant. So there is the option of games that do a good job of feeling historical without actually being historical, in which case the answer is a whole bunch of them, right? Right, there's a ton of games that do a good job of feeling historical. Heck, I imagine Medic Pacific War actually will do an okay job on feeling historical. A whole bunch of World War X shooters doing an okay job on simulating a historical feeling, and making something like War Tales might do that. Let's click in the historical game listing here. I don't know. Maybe something like this, which seems to be a little bit like this War of Mine. And then there is authentic, as in tells us something, or really does a good job on recreating academic understandings of the past, or of their given setting, into a video game. And in that last category thus far, the answer I will give is a very short, simple one of Svoboda 1945, and that's about it. And that's about it. Because games make so many compromises for creative reasons that really the best we can ask for is that games do something interesting more than they do something accurate. And even those games that really, really push, right? You know, a great example. The classic example that we'll play eventually, I promise, is Kingdom Come Deliverance. Or Red Dead Redemption 2. Right, both those two games really exist as both kind of filling the same niche in my head. They're really, 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 really maximally authentic. Right? They specifically market on historical accuracy, on using animations that are actual sword fighting, or being so detailed animating that you're actually gathering the resources properly. And animating super detailed weather effects and environments, and the right plants, the right animals, actual ecosystems, the right language, the right clothing styles, the right animations, weapons, armor, etc., etc., etc. Are either of those games accurate? No. Kingdom Come Deliverance obviously had the big giant controversy when it launched on that there are no people of color in that video game. And they hid behind historical accuracy as a way to deal with that. And they shouldn't have. They really shouldn't have, because that shield doesn't actually work. Huh. That shield truly doesn't work. So I will save discussing that in detail for when we eventually get around to playing it, eventually. I'm definitely not delaying that deliberately. Me? No, would never. Never, ever, ever look at doing that. But in short, the shield of historical accuracy to talk about, to excuse the lack of people of color doesn't actually work when you start digging into the historical evidence. And you'll see there's a ton of other compromises. You know, like the game existing in English. I'm just gonna throw that out there. That is in fact a compromise that breaks historical accuracy. So, the moment we're talking about that, right, you can nitpick games into oblivion. So I think it's far more interesting to be talking about, are there games that are doing things that are interesting, that tell us something about how either the historical period worked, or how we imagine the historical period, and so end up totally sidestepping the question of authenticity or accuracy, and so instead can look at, you know, how does a game try to construct accuracy, right? What does a game think it needs to be accurate? Or to feel authentic, is honestly a more interesting question than, is it actually? Oh look, another Norse game, Niflhel. Huh. Neat. So, I think we actually have kind of sort of maybe gone through all of the historical games. I'm just clicking through a few different things here to see if any of them have anything new to commend it. And the answer I'm seeing is really no. Very much no. Maybe dinosaurs will redeem us. Maybe the dinosaurs shall help us. Ethics Committee Simulator? So we got two that seem to be going for a more realist vibe. Fallen World says, inspired by the original Jurassic Park film. Fair play. Fair play. Oh yes, quite. Also by meteors. How original, I know, right? It is really funny to see that the way people imagine dinosaurs these days is exclusively or still exclusively Jurassic Park, and so survival horror is the only genre that vibes. I'm mostly seeing a brachiosaur there, and that's about it. That's about it. Thank you. Yeah, you could have the Zoo Tycoon dinosaur expansion. That's fair. Zoo Tycoon dinosaur expansion does exist. In which if you spawn in 50 penguins, they will in fact be the T-Rex. I know from experience. Let it be known. Let's just sit and wait for Prehistoric Kingdom, yeah. Now, how's the Ethics Committee simulator? Looks like it is less Ethics Committee simulating than I expected it to be. Way less of an ethics. Honestly, it looks far less of an ethics or methodological nightmare than I expected it to be. So, funky. Now maybe methodology ones maybe worth checking out later. This seems to be actually doing paleontology simulator, sort of, kind of, not really. There's not nearly enough lab work here. Look, Raptoros, I don't even know that it's actually going for... It seems to be going for a private... For a... semi-private in that you own the museum. Which, to be fair, some dig sites do have that, right? Like Thermopolis has its own museum at the Dinosaur Center in Wyoming. So, fair play. But the odds of you getting the skeleton that clean, it does look fairly intricate, so I am a fan. But that last shot there of the Triceratops languishing reminds me that at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, there is, in point of fact, a Stegosaurus that is, unfortunately, in exactly this condition. Sort of. It still is embedded in the rock. But, when I say exactly, I mean exactly. Because, take your bets. Take your bets. Does that skull fit through that door? That's a pretty close fit. Raptoros knows where I'm going. There is, in fact, in the basement of the museum I have been to. They built the storage area in the basement around the fossil, and then put an ordinary ass door on the storage room that they built around the 15-foot tall fossil. You gotta love it. You love when the architects do it. So yeah, they truly... That Triceratops looked a bit funky. I will agree with you. Huh. So I think that's gotten most everything that we have going for it. Those of the 1990s will give us some... Give us something. Nope. Nope. The 1990s do not in fact give us anything, so... I think we have gone through the entire collection of historical games in this demo. Which is really funky. I wasn't expecting that. So, if you like this, go back through the VOD and make sure you wishlist as many of them as possible to let anything that looked good, so that the devs know that there is enthusiasm for it, at least a teeny tiny market, and then we will try and, hopefully, if new big budget must-plays stop coming out ever, try and make sure to work in time to go talk about some of them, like Scabma, Snowfall, like Palace on the Hill, so that as those games come out, we can hopefully try and pick some of them up and showcase some indie games, see what the less high budget realm of historical games are doing in order to actually show off all the very interesting things that are possible within historical game spaces. Otherwise, that's all I've got. We're not going to actually play any games today because I'm just not feeling up to trying to actually play a game without motion sickness. Hello, Blues. You are unfortunately coming in right at the end, or coming back right at the end, because we're just going to have a little short stream today. I just cannot be playing a game right now. I will get motion sick, and it's not going to be a fun time for anyone. So we're just had a talking one. We just had a talking one. It did, right? There's a couple of interesting things coming up. Right, Misericordia, Palace on the Hill, Scabma, some of those games look real cool. And some of the games from the last Steam NextFest should be coming out soon. So, hopefully, yeah, we'll have to try and work some of those back in. Hopefully that museum simulator isn't all of the ethics violations, because while it would be very funny, it is regrettably too common on museum sims. Even natural history museum sims. Also, museum sims should actually, start coming out. Rest in peace, Mondo Museum, on indefinite hiatus. You shall be missed. Anyway, if you like this, follow, share with someone. Actually, better idea. If you like this, go to the YouTube channel that is linked on the stream page, in the About section, and go watch the video I put up there today, because that was real cool. But also make sure you follow, because on Tuesday we'll have more New World, Amazon's MMO that's totally not a colonialism sim, they promise. They definitely didn't have to rework it for racism. And then still pretty yikes. Potentially yikes. I would say definitely pretty yikes. Hopefully we'll have a better idea at the end of Tuesday's stream whether it's actually yikes. And then on Friday we'll have more Castlevania Symphony of the Night. So, yay. I hope you all enjoyed then, and I will catch you all hopefully on Tuesday. Right? Have a good night, everyone.